Hello and welcome back again to this interview series with inspiring child-free women, where we talk about finding magic and meaning beyond motherhood. And today I am here with Leslie Ellis from HeartSong Yoga, Wellness and Coaching. And Leslie and I, we met through the Academy of Soul-Based Coaching. We both certified with the Academy, did training together, had a lot of back and forth coaching sessions together. And I just always really loved Leslie's energy. And yeah, thank you, first of all, for being here, Leslie, and for agreeing to this conversation.
Of course. Thank you, Corinne. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, and so Leslie is a yoga therapist and a soul-based coach who works primarily online with her private clients and group programs. The Sanctuary, a yoga and meditation program to inspire and support spiritual women to connect to their inner wisdom and guidance. Hmm. Yeah. And how it came about, how that sanctuary that she created came about, we will get into a little bit later, because it's a beautiful story. Okay, I just think I have quickly to adjust. The sun is just coming up where I am. It's morning. And Leslie, why don't you tell us where you're calling in from, because you're at the other side of the world.
At the other side of the world, the sun isn't quite going down, but it's more in that trajectory at this point in the day. I am in Bend, Oregon, which is on the west coast of the US.
Mm.
And yeah, in my little office, my house, with the sun still shining in the window. I don't think it's too bright there, but getting
No,
towards late afternoon.
late afternoon, beautiful. And what is alive for you right now? It's late afternoon. You probably are winding down your day. What's alive for you in this moment?
I am winding down for the day. I also have had a day where I've been feeling really inspired. I was on a coaching call with one of my mentors earlier today, and all day it's just been sort of in my awareness, the spaces for women to come together, and being very, very appreciative of that, and how I think the fact that we had this call coming up too, Corinne, but sitting there and watching all these unique women come together with the questions that they had, and the inquiries they're making about how they serve in the world is very inspiring. The coach also, the way she held space for all of that uniqueness, just
Mm.
found it very beautiful. It's been touching me all day long.
Oh, wonderful. Yes, and that's also what we want to do, like here in this series. I want to bring women to you from different sort of paths, women in their 30s, in their 40s, and in their 50s. And Leslie is actually going, she's 57, going towards 60. And she loves her life. When we had that conversation the first time, she told me she's totally at peace with having chosen the child-free life. And yeah, Leslie, I'm just curious, maybe that's a good way where we can drop in. Did you always know whether that you would be child-free, or is that something that developed over time? Maybe you can tell us a little bit about your story there.
Sure, sure. I wouldn't say I always knew that. I grew up in a rural community. Um, all of the models that I had of women, at least the women that I was close to or were close to my family, um, were models of women who were married and had children. There were few women in the community otherwise, but that's basically who I saw. I got married when I was quite young, when I was 20 years old. And at that time, I thought I would have children. However, I was busy at that time going to college. My ex-husband now also, what we were in the stage of developing our careers. And so we talked about it a little bit. It wasn't something that was really up for us at the time. It seemed like something in the future.
Mm.
And we got divorced after 5 years of marriage. And I spent 5 years single, which I am so grateful for. Because I think it was in that time when I was about 25 years old, I I really had the opportunity to live on my own, to be with other women. I was involved in that's when I started doing therapy and kind of working on myself internally. I had a lot of women friends who were quite a bit older than me, and many of them were child free. Many of them also had children, but I had this I just feel like it's a beautiful opportunity to see different models of womanhood and of um, how that could play out. And I got married again when I was about 31, I think. And at that time, we didn't have any intention of having children. We were both in our careers. We were new in our marriage. We wanted to focus on that. And we were just having fun, sort of creating the life that we wanted as to child free, not unmarried. We were married then, but child free people. And we were actually married for 20 years. I'm divorced again and now have another partner. By the time we got together, there's no question about children. As I'm already in my 50s. Um, but in that 20-year marriage, there was a time in my mid 30s that I again started questioning that decision. Um, you know how they say the metabolic or the metabolic clock gets to ticking, and you start having those questions. And I think people would even say, "Oh, you're in your late 30s, you don't have children. Well, if you're going to, you better do it soon." And it's surprising to me that people think that they need to tell you that. But I heard that message from inside and outside, I think, and I started having those questions.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
husband at the time, we talked about it, and we actually decided that we would see what would happen. So we quit using birth control, and um, it was never a big push, but we both were open to if that happens, it happens now. And it didn't happen. And I can say that there were days when I felt disappointed about that, but I never felt a desire that was so strong that, oh, I have to try to make this happen, to do any fertility testing or, anything like that. And after maybe a year and a half or so of that, I had a realization. I think I was around 40, and I realized, no, I really don't want to have children.
Mm.
I had this dream to open a yoga studio, and it seems like it was like a flash of insight of like what's wanting to be birthed. I was kind of in this process, and it was like, um, it may have happened over a longer period of time, but it really, in retrospect, it feels like it was like that's what I'm trying to birth. That's
Mm.
what I can put all this creative energy that I have into all of this, like love and desire to take care of something. And
Mm.
that's what I did. I opened a yoga studio, and it definitely felt like a baby for a long time, and then a toddler, and then it sort of kept growing. And the whole time I was running that studio, I had this kind of relationship with it, with like what stage of development was it in, was I in? um,
Mm.
and even when I closed that studio after a period of time, I had the feeling like, "Oh, it's time for her to go off to college now," or something like that. Like, I'm gonna go do something different.
Wow. I love that. I love how you took in that metaphor of, yeah, you give birth to your yoga studio and then you nurture it, you care for it. The studio goes through different stages, life stages, right? And then, as you say, you even let it go at some point, yeah, when it was time to, yeah, for you to move on and for the child to move
That's gonna
on.
be fun too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Hmm.
And I'm just curious because I we both see it that way, right? We both see that you can have idea babies, and these idea babies then become maybe something very physical, like a studio, a business, a workshop, and you nurture them, you care for them. And in was it always like was it always kind of, did you always see yourself as this creatress, you know, beyond procreating? And if so, how did that come about? Was that because of the circles that you were spending time in your 30s? Because I know for a lot of women that the idea is still a bit sometimes foreign, that you are, you know, you can put your creative energy towards something else and then you nurture it and care for it like a mother, but not as a physical mother of a child.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, I think it's an evolution for
Hmm.
sure, and um, maybe in part a constant willingness to stay engaged with my own growth too. I mean, I feel like that's part of what I've nurtured over time too, is myself to keep growing and to keep exploring and to keep changing. And and I feel in perhaps in retrospect, I didn't really plan it this way. But having chosen a child-free life, I've actually had the space and the opportunity and the room in my life to do that. I'm really grateful for that.
Mm.
I also have practiced yoga since I was in my mid 20s, and my meditation practice. So there's that sort of internal seeking that has always been alive. And then, yes, being involved in women's groups and in my own coaching and counseling,
Mm.
so helpful to just sort of keep me awake to and looking for kind of what's this path that I want to travel and how can I nourish it and what is it that's mine to do in the world? What's kind of the offering that I have to give? And I think that I closed my studio, but my business and my sort of dharmic offering in the world is still what I'm nurturing, what I'm um, growing, what keeps developing, and it's very exciting to me
Mm.
to sort of watch how that happens and the relationship that I have with that.
Mm. Yeah, and it's, as I like how you say that evolution, because you seem like through the yoga and through the circle that you spend time with you and just your inner inquiry and your curiosity and being open to change, you kind of went with the energy that, with life force, and things wanted to be birthed through you, yeah, as well. And then the next evolution, then there's a new piece that now wants to come through you, and then that you nurture again, and it keeps going and going.
Yeah.
That's
And then
beautiful.
that has that metabolic clock.
And it doesn't
Like,
have that metabolic clock.
yeah, that can
Yeah.
continue for all of my life. I feel that I will continue to birth new ideas and create um, sort of the next stage of whatever it is that of who I am and what I'm doing in the world, which is
Yeah.
very exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, and I see it the same way. I see when I look at my journey, it's the same way. Like you kept, I keep creating, whatever wants to come through me in that specific time, that comes through. But I also think what you're pointing to now, what you just said, there's no clock attached to this. This is a very also an important, I think, message sometimes to hear for women who had children and then the children move out, and then they are in their early 50s or around that time, and they're wondering, and now what? Yeah.
Mhm.
And again, there's no like, then for that woman, what wants to be created through you now at this point in time, and I think that's sometimes maybe where, yeah, where they can also happen, like an inspiration can happen here, from child-free women to women who had children, you know because there is a shift happening there too. uh, that's what I
Absolutely.
see in clients as well, who have children, but the children are older now. Yeah, they're going to
Mhm.
college.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right. They're going to college. And there can be, I see it not so much in myself because I didn't have children, but also in my clients, that there's this place of grief and loss, which is completely natural.
Yeah.
And I really encourage women to sit with that, to hold space for themselves in
Mm.
that, and to know that there's still that creative energy that we all have in our womb space. Like there's in yoga we talk about the chakras, the energy centers, and that is in the belly, and that spark of life is continues there. Like we still have those seeds that are ready to grow, and we're willing to nurture them, nourish them, give them space.
Mm.
And there's the right timing for the idea of babies. And they do show themselves if we're open to that.
Yeah. Yes.
Mhm.
Beautiful said. Beautiful said. I also remember last time when we spoke, we talked about, how by coming together in the circle and, with other women, you and I, we have kind of had that experience of seeing different expressions of the feminine and of womanhood, right? Where, as you said, you had women who had children when were mothers, others were child free, but also we see the palette of different gifts and talents and skills that women have. And you brought obviously your talents and gifts into what you're doing now, right? So do you feel like with that comes also a sense of, deeper meaning or a purpose um, to your life and magic? Yeah.
Mm, absolutely. I have meaning and magic in every day because of this opportunity that I have to be present with myself and what I offer in the world, and that it's so important to me. It's like it really is what I put my whole heart and soul to, my day-to-day work. And most certainly being in those circles and having mentors, having women mentors who were both taught me about, but also opened up the space for me and for the other women to see all these different expressions of femininity, of womanhood, of of motherhood. And and I think one of the things that I took from many of my teachers, and I remember telling you a little bit about one of my very first women mentors in the women's circle. I was in my 20s at the time, but it was kind of one of those moments again that I reflect back on and think how that helped me to make a shift in how I viewed what it was that was possible for
Mm.
me as a woman in the world. She taught about nurturing and nourishing, and that this is a quality that we as women have. It's a quality that's inherent in being a woman, that we want to nurture, and that we tend to bring together community, that the way that we connect with other people is really important.
Mm.
And just briefly, she talked about the Earth Mother and the rainbow woman, and described like these two different ways of being a woman. And my past experience would have really only acknowledged the earth mother, the one that does take care of children and all of that. And when my teacher talked about the rainbow woman who, instead of making a big stew, would want to make fancy appetizers that are all real pretty and all organized right on the plate, or all kinds of other examples. Maybe you get the idea there. I thought, oh, rainbow woman is a way to be a woman in the world. And like I said, that has just stuck with me. And um, yeah, I don't want to lose my train of thought with this, but I think that's just reflected then, and it kind of created this boost for me, and then being able to do what it is that felt right for me, not what other people did, but what felt right for me. Like, how do I express my womanhood, my femininity, the places where I feel like that clashes with society. I love, Corinne, the name of your business, Rebel Heart Woman. I feel like, that rebel heart is really something that I can really connect to. And sometimes it felt like, especially, it doesn't feel this way so much anymore, although there's still little edges of it, but it felt like being a rebel, to be a woman who didn't have children and who was so focused on business and my work and all of that. But
Mm.
that's really served me well.
Yeah, I really love how that rainbow woman archetype. And I think it also just shows the power of connecting with these different archetypes, right? There's so many out there. I remember sitting with Shamali, one of our common teachers, in a circle where she talked about the seer, the woman who, and that seer wouldn't have she wouldn't be the earth mother, right? She would be the seer. She looks more, okay, what does maybe the community or the wider family need, less than the nuclear family, yeah? And that's what she would nurture, and that's where she would put her creative energy towards. And even though at the time I was still very much actively calling in a child, there was always another part of me who was like, yeah, but I could as well see myself as seer. Like I could always see myself as both, yeah.
Right.
Which then
Yeah.
at some point for me was about just coming to peace with, well, what either or, whichever happens now it doesn't actually matter. It will be good either way. Yeah. And yeah, there was something else there that I wanted to speak to. Yes, the rebel. So yeah, and I think this is just helpful for women who are out there really listening to us, who are wondering, contemplating the child-free life, or who are not ambivalent, have maybe a lot of ambivalence about having children or becoming a mother. Yeah, it is still today a sense of a rebellious act. Unfortunately, obviously, what we are doing here is exactly trying to serve that this doesn't have to be a rebellious act anymore. That it's just normal. That there are women who are child free, or couples who are child free. Yeah, and so that you are just living a life that for the majority of people is sometimes a little bit not quite clear what that life could look like. It can be a little bit vague, yeah. Or then, sometimes women are being obviously labeled, she's a career woman, or she's like there's other labels that I could never associate with. Yeah, I'm a feminine business owner, but I'm not like, yeah, I'm just I do that because that's coming through me. That's where my heart is, like you, Leslie, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, and there is this element of learning to own your story. And I think, like, as we do now, reflecting with Leslie, talking through her story of growing up and in her 20s and how things came about, it's very useful, you know, to go back in time and, okay, what happened in my life? What were different things that impacted me or my way of thinking, yeah, or embracing? Yeah.
And part of what I take from what you're saying, and that I might offer as a reflection, is that there isn't, first of all, any one way to do it. I also want to say, and it's okay actually to be a rebel.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
And also that in that we can each individually also reflect back on our own lives and see the places where things shifted or things changed or something new came into the light of our awareness
Mm,
that was a calling to be followed.
mm,
And that I think in talking to some women, there's a place where, well, I always thought I was going to be a mother, and that didn't happen. So I didn't fulfill in some way what I was going to do or what I was supposed to do.
mm,
And I just see it very differently, that perhaps that in any moment we can never actually see what is down the path
mm,
and what's possible for us. We only can see what we already know, like what we've seen before. And so, of course, we plan around that and we make goals around that. But there's all kinds of things that can come to us as we live along the path of our life that that might shift that. And that's not a failure to
mm,
have done what you thought you were going to do, um, or somehow you were wrong even in planning what you were doing before. I really see it more like step by step.
mm.
And everything that I've done has brought me now to this moment where I can see what the next step is. But I couldn't see that 3 steps ago, even though I thought I could see 25 steps ahead.
Absolutely. It's an evolution, right? Like, I wouldn't have thought I would do this series 2 years ago because I was still very much in, yeah, there was still this focus on, you know, last stretch of calling in a child. And now, yeah, we can't. We keep changing. We keep
Yeah.
changing, and we have new pieces of information coming into our field through life, through what we experience. Yeah, beautiful, beautiful, Leslie. Oh, thank you for that. Yeah, and maybe that brings me actually to the last question around, and I mean, you have already answered it, but I think when you're in your early 40s and you're questioning, okay, let's say, should I try maybe more? Should I try different methods to still kind of call in that child? Or is this actually now the place of, you know, uh, uh, letting it go if you can? Obviously, that happens naturally. It doesn't happen like, now I want to let go and I let go. I just want to point that out there. But yeah, there comes a time where, you know, you still have that little window, and then it's a then there's also a question of, I had that, you know, well, will I regret not having tried longer or harder or tried more things that were available for me? Yeah. And that is a question no one can answer either, right? Like, I don't
Right.
know whether I'm going to regret this. But what I could do is think through. I really put myself kind of imaginary, okay, into that Corinne at 50. What could our life look like at 50 and at 60 without children? I really kind of had to play that through. Yeah, because there were fears there for me that I needed to look in the eye and kind of take out the heat. And it was so helpful in my process, because then I could actually start afterwards, is when I could start to embrace the child-free life. And I just wonder now for you, I mean, you are going towards 60s. Did you at any point have these thoughts of, am I going to regret this? Or was that kind of finished once you knew, now I'm going to give birth to the studio?
Definitely, there was that thought and that question. And I think it's an important question, as you're saying, and there's a process for each of us to go through around that.
Mm.
So one thing that I might say in response to some of what you were just sharing is that, first of all, for me, it seemed like this flash of insight. Oh, this is what wants to be born.
Mm.
And at the same time, I was in reflection with myself about, there are these other options. There are these other things that I could do. I could try harder.
Mm.
And that question, should I? And I had to look inside myself. What was the level of desire that I had for actually having a child?
Mm.
And I realized, like, that desire is not that intense.
Mm.
I actually really love my husband and I really love my dog, and we have a great life that I feel satisfied with. I don't feel the urge to do more. So
Mm.
certainly if a woman had that urge, like she wanted to do more, to try harder, then I think that would be really important as
Mm.
her process. For me, it was more easy to say, like, oh, this feels like an endpoint
Mm.
to that. And I can really embrace this um, this excitement that I
Mm.
have about going into business
Mm.
with myself and putting everything into that. That doesn't mean that the question about will I regret this completely went away. That
Mm.
question is still alive. At times I would say, um, maybe all through my 40s.
Mm.
But it was never a question that really bothered me that
Mm.
much. It was just more an awareness of things like, oh, I I don't have children, so I don't have that to sort of go back to. There was a time when I was working in geriatrics, and I saw families and people who had lost the ability to really take care of themselves, and they had children who were coming in and like taking control. And so there was this awareness, oh, I don't have that.
Mm-hmm.
So I've looked at, like, well, what are other things that I can do to shore up so that I have security when I am in my more elder years. So I have some of those things set into place. And I also I honestly don't worry about it that much. I
Yeah.
just feel like things will work out. That I've done so much in my life to really create the life that I want, and it's worked well for me as it has been, and
Mm.
that it'll continue to, that I'll know, like, the next thing that I need to do when I get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did ask that question of myself. Will I regret it? And the answer to, do I regret it, which you didn't actually ask, but I'll just answer it, is not at all. I would not have had, I would not have, wouldn't have the life that I have, a life that I love, um, if I had had children. That doesn't mean I wouldn't still maybe have a life that I love. That could have completely been true too. So, but I love the life that I have, and I wouldn't give it up. I wouldn't exchange it
Yeah.
at all. And I feel so grateful that um, it feels like I had an opportunity to, like, make my own decision. I didn't just, because I know, especially in my generation, and maybe still, but in my generation, many women just got married right out of high school. Many of my classmates married out of high school, had children. It's just the way it was. It's just the way you did it.
Mm.
And I didn't go that path. I
Mm.
know many of them have very happy lives, so that's beautiful. I know some of them don't have as happy lives, and that they, when I speak to them, reflect back and see that I didn't really I didn't really make a choice about this. I didn't really make a decision about this.
Mm. Mhm.
And yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah,
What I
yeah, absolutely. And I think that, I mean, you spoke to so many important points. Like, I think first the desire, like what coming back, yeah, that was so important for me to come back to my own heart. What is my desire here, moment by moment, week by week, month by month? And that's kind of from where I then made my decisions and choices. And I think that coming back to ourselves to make these decisions and choices is, well, that's what you do with yoga, right? It's what we do with soul-based coaching. We invite people to come back to themselves, come home to yourselves, and from there, what is it that you would like to have happen? What wants to be birthed through you? Yeah, yeah. It's beautiful, and it's beautiful. It's just beautiful to see and hear you speak about, yeah, what your life is like and how you really love it, and and how you're happy about the choices that you took on
yeah,
May. Yeah.
yeah, thank you.
Ah, such a rich conversation. Leslie, is what would you say, to our listeners, to our viewers? I mean, you've gave away already so many beautiful nuggets here of wisdom. Is there any lasting words you want to share for anyone who is listening, who is, yeah, not sure if they want children, or in a difficult place with the question of children, or beyond having had their children even?
Just to reiterate, there are so many ways to um, express womanhood and even motherhood. I think, um, and our nurturing spirits as women. And if I could reflect for any woman to go back to yourself, and I think what I would love for every woman to nurture first is self-love. And in that self-love, then to sit with herself first and really like hold space for having choice and making her own decisions about what is important and what that level of desire is.
Mm.
And I also recognize that for some women, it doesn't feel like a choice, that maybe they do want children and for whatever reason can't have children. And so then to go back and if I could offer what else is in your heart to nurture and to grow and to spend, and that there's so much beyond children that need that in the world. And that when we do that, then we um, like that seer that you were saying, perhaps we get to step into that space of seeing more what the larger community needs. And
Mm.
it's really so important. It's vital that there are women taking that role in the community and nurturing other women and men as well, and
Mm.
really helping us as I could get big here, but like helping humanity to develop and grow in the way that is possible for all of us.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah. Thank you so much, Leslie. If women or listeners want to get in touch with you, how can they best get in touch with you? I will also share it in the show notes, but if you would just want to say.
Yeah. Well, my email address is Leslie, Leslie, at yogaheartsong.com. My website, I'm just being aware right now, like, oh, it's a little bit out of date, but is yogaheartsong.com. And that is a good way to get in touch with me.
Mm,
Yeah. And
wow,
there you'd find all the other stuff like Facebook and Instagram and all of that.
wonderful. Thanks. Yeah, and to yeah, this was Leslie Ellis. And there's a few more conversations that I will be sharing with you. So keep checking in, and if you want to learn more, how I can support you through a group program or one-on-one, then head to my website and learn more about the Finding Magic and Meaning Beyond Motherhood coaching group program. All right, have a wonderful day or evening wherever you are.